everybody. So by now you've heard me bragging about saving people money at savewithconrad.com for years, but I thought, you know what? Don't take my word for it. Let's ask someone who really did save with Conrad. Let's welcome in Tyrus. Tyrus, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm good, Conrad. How about yourself?
Man, I'm delighted to talk to you. I got to ask, what made you come to Save with Conrad originally?
Well, first, I'm a return shopper, if you will. I was listening to the podcast years ago now with you and Bruce, and I just figured we were in the mode for a refinance, and I heard you guys save money, so I called you guys, got hooked up with Jimmy way back then, and that's really how the ball started to roll.
So initially you were interested in lowering your monthly payments, or did you want to knock out some credit card debt, or what was your goal the first time you went to savewithconrad.com?
It was mostly just to get the lower rate, but there's a little bit of credit card debt in there too, so we rolled that all up.
And you got a cheaper monthly payment on the other side of that?
Yeah, yep. And with this time that I used, it saved me quite a bit a month. Yeah.
So let's talk about what brought you back to Save with Conrad. First of all, thank you for using us not once, but twice. I appreciate that. But that was your needs back then. When was that? Was that 2020 that you did that before?
Yeah, it was around that, maybe 2019, somewhere around that.
Okay. So now a few years later, your needs have changed. What prompted you to go to savewithconrad.com this time?
Well, we were looking to refinance once again because we bought during the high rate time, and we had, a little bit of credit card debt, and we thought, why not hit that refinance button? And originally we were thinking, why not just go through the national brand that was servicing our loan? I called one of them over there and he crunched the numbers and he said, no can do. Sorry. And then I thought, I'll just stay with Conrad again. And I called and the delightful Frances answered, and you know her.
Oh, yeah.
And the first thing after I told her what the national brand said, she just said, are they stupid? We can save you money. And she got the ball rolling. I worked with OG Larry and saving $425 a month.
All right. I love to hear that, man. $425 a month. I love that, dude. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
If you had someone who was on the fence, because I know that there's a lot of people who just know me as the wrestling podcaster, but if you had someone who listens to my pods and they're on the fence about whether or not this is a real service and can he really do this? I mean, what would you say to that?
Absolutely do it. It worked for me multiple times, from Jimmy way back when to Francis and Larry. It just, the whole team, they just had nothing but great things to say. They're easy to work with. They worked well with the inspectors and everything like that. It's just a great experience, and I would recommend it to anybody.
Well, I'm glad that we were able to help save you some money, and I would be delighted if we could help save you and your family some money. Do what Tyrus did. Go right now to savewithconrad.com. You can talk to a live person, get a quick quote, or just drop us an email directly at conrad@savewithconrad.com. And of course, we can still do it the old school way. Give us a call toll free at 888-425-0105. Thanks for all the time today, Tyrus. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Conrad.
That's number 2129, Equal Housing Lender. SaveWithConrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad the Mortgage Guy, and you're listening to 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff. Eric, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm good, bud. I am in State College, Pennsylvania, part of Pennsylvania I've never been to before. That's always exciting. At Penn State, on the campus of Penn State, the mecca of collegiate wrestling, if you talk to people from this part of the country. Don't talk to anybody in Oklahoma or Iowa and say that. But here in Pennsylvania, wrestling is king. So we're looking forward to a fun weekend. We've got some amazing wrestlers going to hit the mat. Mason Paris, Kyle Dake, a lot of good stuff coming your way, man. There's going to be some great matchups. We got Olympic champions, world champions, badasses from all walks. Bo Nickel's going to join us. He's going to jump in about halfway through and cover cover our main event action for us. So it's going to be a fun night.
I can't wait. I had a blast watching Real American Freestyle, the maiden voyage, and I'm really excited that as folks are listening to this, tomorrow night, Real American Freestyle #2 is happening live from Penn State University. You just saw the card. If you're watching along with us here at 83weeks.com, it's absolutely stacked. And I'm pretty fired up about this, man. What I'm really excited about, though, is, the collector in me can't help but appreciate that you guys have some new trading cards coming to me.
Yeah, I mean, Chad Bronstein is doing a great job of getting this brand out there. We've got sponsorships already. We've got a trading card deal that we're launching. There's just a lot of great stuff happening. And again, it's just the enthusiasm of a new sport, something that's never been done before. So we're getting a lot of positive reaction. One of the matchups I wanted to talk about that I'm really looking forward to, because this cat, he ended up, as an elite level, wrestler, but he could have easily been a sports entertainer. It's Pat Downey. I don't know if you've seen many of his clips, but he's a very controversial cat. I was thinking when we were listening to the open here, that just unbelievably good NWO music, that I should see if we could license that one time. I'd love to have Pat Downey come out to the NWO music, because Pat Downey is about as NWO as NWO could get. So it should be fun. It's going to be a fun weekend.
Tell everybody where they can watch the event, Eric.
Well, if you are local, you can come to the Bryce Jordan Center here at Penn State. But if you're like almost everybody else, you can check us out on Fox Nation. If you haven't subscribed to Fox Nation, it's a great platform. A lot of really cool content they're developing. Some of it, 50 Cent's got a new series there. A lot of really good stuff. But of course, for no other reason, Real American Freestyle at Fox Nation.
RealAmericanFreestyle.com is where you can pick up those tickets if you're in the Pennsylvania area and within driving distance, and you want to be able to say that you were there during one of these very first RAF events. But the Fox Nation app, I just want to give them a cheap plug. I have to admit, before Real American Freestyle, I did not have the app and wasn't even really familiar with the service. It's only like $7 or $8, Eric. The idea that you're essentially getting a PLE at this point for a few dollars is like maybe the best value in sports right now.
It is. And, we're putting a lot financially. We're putting a lot into these events. We're not cutting any corners at all. But the people at Fox are super excited about us. Obviously, if you're a fan of amateur wrestling, if you're not a high school wrestler, collegiate wrestler, or just a fan or family member of somebody who is an athlete, man, get out and subscribe at Fox Nation, support Real American Freestyle, because that's what they're looking at. Fox is looking at those new subscriptions, and we know there's a hell of a big loyal audience out there for amateur wrestling, for MMA, and really wrestling is the foundation of MMA. It's built upon, MMA is built upon wrestling and wrestling skills. So if you love MMA, check us out. We think you'll love us too, but check out Fox Nation.
RealAmericanFreestyle.com to grab those tickets. Of course, the Fox Nation app is where you can watch the event. I'm going to be watching. It's happening tomorrow night, Saturday night. You don't want to miss it. And I'm fired up for it, man. I've been to State College before. I saw Alabama play Penn State there years ago. That's a beautiful part of the country I'd never seen before, Eric.
It really is. And, I've traveled, I lived in Western Pennsylvania outside of Pittsburgh for a while and traveled around the western side of the state quite a bit, even as a kid. But I'd never been in this part of Pennsylvania. And it is, just geographically, it's the mountains, it's just the terrain. It's a beautiful, beautiful part of the country. And that stadium, the Penn State Stadium, holy smokes. That's a hell of a stadium.
Well, we're looking forward to it. Don't dare miss it. RealAmericanFreestyle.com is where you can grab your tickets. The Fox Nation app, it's so early. This is fun to be a part of, almost like a ground floor opportunity to be able to say, hey, I was there at Real American Freestyle #2. Let's jump into some wrestling talk today, though, because we love talking about the way wrestling used to be. And, of course, on this show, that means we're going to be talking a little bit about Monday Nitro. I can't believe this is real, but like 30 years ago, almost this exact same day. You and I are recording on a Wednesday. That's unusual for us as folks are listening to this. 30 years ago yesterday, you guys did your first Nitro from right here in Huntsville, Alabama at the Von Braun Civic Center. There were about 7,000 folks in attendance. Only 2,100 of those were paid, so it's a pretty small gate of 18,000. But in this era of trying to compete with the juggernaut, the number one wrestling show of all time, Monday Night Raw, the optics are pretty important. So I know that sounds bad, 2,100 paid, 7,000 in attendance, but looking big and being live, that was important for Nitro, wasn't it?
Absolutely. That was the reason why I went to the Mall of America for the very first episode, because we had zero confidence that we would be able to put a significant enough number of people in a venue to make it look good on television. And there's a psychology to that. It should be kind of easy to figure out, but most people don't think about it, right? From a television producer's perspective. But if you're sitting at home and you decide to watch something, some live sports, live action, live whatever, and you tune in and you see that the crowd, there's kind of a crowd there, and they're not very excited and they're not very animated, and the action that could be going on in the ring could be just perfectly fine, but the audience just isn't with it for whatever reason. And when it's a small audience, you got to turn down the lights. When you turn down the lights, so you're not drawing attention to the fact that you've got a bunch of empty seats, it takes away from the pop inside of the ring. Colors aren't quite as bright. It doesn't look quite as vibrant. It has a dingy, dark kind of feel that as a viewer, you're not going to really notice it. But what you're also not going to notice is energy. And while you're sitting at home watching a bunch of people who are they're there, their asses are in the seats, and they're not having a good time, you don't feel that energy, you don't see that energy, what do you think is going on subconsciously in the viewer's mind? And no reason really to watch this. Boom, you're gone, right? So you have to have enough energy in the venue to translate to the viewer at home. If you're live action sports, you have to. It's mandatory. Elvis Presley said it. The most important part of any one of his shows was the audience. And the point I'm making is very similar in that respect. And since we couldn't draw an audience, particularly in places like Huntsville, you know why? Even though, Nitro was had a buzz on it, wasn't really the hot show yet. But the reason we couldn't draw in Huntsville is because WCW absolutely destroyed that market with paper. They've been paper houses for so long in the Southeast. There wasn't a market that we couldn't go to where we hadn't conditioned the fans in that market to the fact that you just don't have to buy a ticket to WCW. They're going to go on sale, and you can go buy one, or you can wait for about 5 days before the show, and then you can go get one for free with a hamburger anywhere in town. And when you've spent years, as WCW did before I took over, everything was paper because they produced all of their television was produced in places like the Von Braun Center and all over the Southeast, where you had those absolutely perfect venues, 5,000 to 10,000 seat venues, big enough to look good on television, but not so big that, it seemed like you were putting on a wrestling event in a cave. But every one of those great buildings we had burned to the ground by papering the houses for television. So to all of a sudden get the market to go, I'm going to drop $40 for a ticket. We weren't there yet, which is why there was so much paper.
Let's talk about that episode of Nitro. We start with the Macho Man's music. He's going to come to the ring and wrestle Kurosawa. This is a New Japan relationship. Kurosawa actually wound up having about 40 matches with different WCW competitors, but he did spend a good amount of time here between 95 and 96 in WCW. We would see some other talent featured more prominently. Was this a quote unquote excursion for Kurosawa? Was it supposed to be a short-term thing, or why didn't he become a long-term player for WCW?
Well, there were a lot of reasons. I think the primary reason that New Japan wanted Kurosawa to come over is because they wanted him to become familiar with the American style wrestling. He'd been in the dojo, he'd been part of New Japan, but he was young, didn't have a lot of international experience. And Masasa Ito felt that it was a good thing for him to come over to the United States for a short period of time, to train, to compete, and just to begin to get exposure to the American system, or the WCW system at that time. It was never intended to be a long-term deal. A lot of times, visa restrictions were the primary reason that a lot of guys couldn't come over and stay for lengths of time. And in other cases, it was just, they had families in Japan and they couldn't just disappear for 6 months and leave their families behind. So between the visa situation and just, real life, it was very difficult for guys to come over and spend any length of time consistently.
I do want to ask you about this next segment. As a reminder, this is the go home episode of Nitro before Halloween Havoc 1995. Yes, that Halloween Havoc. And in this particular segment, immediately following the Savage Kurosawa match, we learned from you on commentary, because this is still the era where you're in the seat and not yet Tony Schiavone, that Hulk Hogan, the Giant, and the entire Dungeon of Doom are present in the building, when all of a sudden you guys are interrupted by King Curtis. Now, I've always felt like these King Curtis promos, I imagine that they were shot in Hawaii, but this one in particular, I think, was done here in Huntsville. And King Curtis is positioned as almost being the Dungeon of Doom's, I don't know, supplier of wisdom. He's here babbling on in some variation of English, and all of a sudden we see Kevin Sullivan appear with the Giant and Gene Okerlund, and they're talking about this insurance policy. That is, of course, a giant block of ice in the background. And Sullivan is referring to this insurance policy as the Yeti. And he's talking about this being an evil dwelling in Hogan's heart. And Sullivan says he doesn't think there's one bit of goodness left in Hulk Hogan. And the Giant is going to say that he is the real immortal, not Hulk Hogan. And Sullivan promises us that the Yeti will be in Detroit for Halloween Havoc. This is, of course, going to be the debut of the Yeti at Halloween Havoc. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking to yourself, okay, Yeti sounds like the Abominable Snowman. But what we actually got was a guy wrapped up in athletic tape that looked like toilet paper, dressed like a mummy, not really a Yeti. Is this the GHB era of WCW? What's going on here? How does this happen, Eric?
It was a far more successful angle creatively than people give it credit for, because they did name a cooler after him.
Yeah, they did. That's true.
Come on, there's an upside right now. Dude, as you're laying this all out to me and I'm looking at some of those stills, and, I got to be careful, because I loved Hulk. He was one of my best friends. But that doesn't take away the fact that sometimes he came up with some really ridiculous shit, as did I, as do all of us who are in the business of coming up with good ideas. You can't spend a career coming up with good ideas and getting paid for it without coming up with some bad ones along the way. This was one of those. And the reason I couldn't stop laughing is I'm imagining Hulk and Kevin Sullivan in a room laying this stuff out and bouncing ideas off each other. Because as goofy as this idea was in 1995, and believe me, it was still goofy in 1995. It's not like we're looking back at something 20 years ago and say, yeah, well, everything was kind of goofy back then. No, this was the epitome of goofiness even in 95. This is like Memphis kind of stuff, right? But both Hulk and Kevin had a lot of Memphis in them. And I don't know if it's because, earlier in their careers, they had success with that kind of storyline in that market, or it's just they were having fun. I don't know what the deal was, but that was bizarre, bro.
Can I give you a theory?
I could have stopped it, or at least tried to, and I didn't. So it's not like I'm blaming anybody else. I'm not putting it on Hulk. I'm not putting it on Kevin, because ultimately I could have stopped it. And I should have, because it was downright horrible. But it's funny now. We can go back and get a chuckle out of it.
I have a theory about this I want to pitch you. And I'm not saying this.
You think they were both high?
No, not at all. I was just kidding around.
I would agree with you on that.
Well, they may have been, but that's a separate thing. I've had a theory for a long time, that especially when you look back at the NWA era, we'll call it the Jim Crockett Promotions era. They were positioning themselves like they were real wrestling, and the WWF was more the Hollywood stuff for kids. They didn't have cartoons. They weren't on lunch boxes and sleeping bags. They didn't have action figures, that sort of thing.
Yeah, they couldn't get any licensing or merchandising or any of that kind of stuff.
It was aimed at an older audience, you know, so it was more blood and guts and down and dirty. And I think that's why so many of our listeners really love it and gravitate to it now. But let's be honest, the majority of our listeners now grew up on WWF programming. They had the Hulk Hogan action figures and that sort of thing. So if WCW wants to be in that game and they want to aim to a more youthful, younger audience, then it makes sense that you get the hero from the other channel. That's Hulk Hogan. So if you know that this dude made a mint from licensing action figures, toys, lunchboxes, sleeping bags, just kid stuff, then it makes sense that you would try to aim some of his storylines and angles towards kid stuff. And I know this is silly, the whole Dungeon of Doom nonsense and the Yeti and the block of ice, but let's take ourselves back to 1995. Wasn't the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers one of the #1 syndicated shows at the time? Weren't they a merch monster? Weren't they a licensing machine? So if you're thinking about it from a targeting the children standpoint, and I mean that in a positive way, not a negative way, but we're talking about monetizing merch and the Hulk Hogan IP, it makes sense that you would have Hulk Hogan. Like if Hulk Hogan appeared in a Mighty Morphin Power Rangers in 95, would anybody have really been shocked? I wouldn't have. It kind of felt like, yeah, well, that makes sense. It's kind of on brand with Hulk Hogan and the type of things he does. So this to me is an attempt to set the hook for those kids who watch Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, who grew up with Hulk Hogan. Like, it's okay if it's a little over the top and a little silly, just like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was. I don't know. That's just a guess that I think is worth discussing maybe.
Well, it's generous. Number one, that's a very generous take on your part, meaning you're ascribing some strategic or tactical, plan to a creative. And I'd like to think that that was the case. And I could sit here and pretend that it was and give myself an out, so to speak, for allowing it to happen. But I can assure you that was not part of any conversation. This was solely a Kevin, Hulk. They were in their creative groove and they both loved this idea and they fed off of each other. Here's you're partially right in that one of the reasons that we brought Hulk to WCW is because WCW had zero licensing. Our merchandising was abysmal. The number of shirts we'd sell at an event, well, we had to give the tickets away. How many people do you think actually bought shirts?
Right.
And the idea was, well, this is like macro, like looking at it big picture. Well, if we bring Hulk Hogan in, we'll get more licensing and merchandising deals. Kind of, yeah. Possibly, yes. Potentially, for sure. But a lot has to go into positioning yourself for those licensing and merchandising deals that take a long time, and that you have to be very targeted. The problem with the creative that we're talking about, the Dungeon of Doom creative, and why it didn't work from a licensing and merchandising perspective or from a television perspective, is because if taking your
theory,
your perspective, your theory, if we had a kids audience,
right,
then your perspective would be logical, and I would probably go, yeah, I didn't think of it, but I probably should have. But we didn't have a kids audience. Our audience was like 25 to 90. The TBS and TNT audience was not. Now we were trying to attract 18 to 39, but clearly we weren't there yet. Not with this stuff, right? So we're not satisfying our existing audience. We're taking something that is so unique. I'll be generous too. We're taking some creative that is so unique that's targeted toward kids, and we're going to put it out there knowing we don't have any kids, and we're going to turn off the core audience that we do have. because they're not going to sit through this shit. So that was like the double whammy. If we would have had a children's audience, and if we would have had some licensing and merchandising in place, absolutely your theory would be 100% applicable. But we didn't have a kids audience, and we didn't have any licensing and merchandising in place. We just came up with a really, really silly idea.
You know, we were fortunate enough to sit with Kevin Sullivan a few years ago at one of our Top Guy events here for ad-free shows in Huntsville. And one of the first questions when we opened it up for Q&A for our family members at adfreeshows.com was, hey, why did you do the Dungeon of Doom? You're this genius booker. This is a terrible idea. It's terrible creative. Why did you do the Dungeon of Doom? And Kevin gave the most insightful, honest answer I've ever heard about this, and it made me rethink it all.
He said he was high.
Well, no, and I know you necessarily won't love the answer, maybe, but I thought it was genius. He said, hey, we were trying to go with a new style of wrestling. We wanted to be able to feature the cruiserweights and the Chris Benoits, and we were trying to push the envelope with the type of wrestling that we knew the smart marks and the adults would like. But we also needed to serve Hulk Hogan, because Hulk Hogan, when he came over, he needed people to work with that he could trust, and he didn't trust a lot of people. And we knew that he would trust some of his friends. So when Hulk Hogan and his friends come along, now I've got all of these guys that are in the Hulk sphere, if you will, that I've got to find a spot for on the show. Would you rather have a bunch of hard-hitting badass matches and then the Hulk Hogan silliness in one segment, or should I have just sprinkled them all throughout the show? Like, if I've got to put them all on the show, let's get it in one segment. Let's do the silly over the top Gaga in one segment. And I thought, you know what? That makes sense. If you're going to slide Earthquake and Zodiac and some others in there, okay, get it out of the way. And then let's go see Chris Benoit and Dean Malenko and that sort of thing. And it was like, damn, that's pretty smart. I never even considered that.
Yeah. If that was part of the thought process, and I wasn't there, next to Kevin or Hulk for this. So I certainly don't know, but that makes sense to me. So it's certainly plausible. Kevin was he's a very tactical person. So this kind of feels like a Kevin thought process. So yeah, I'll buy that. And look, here's the part that I really buy about Kevin's explanation. When evidently he said to you he had to serve Hulk. Absolutely right. You got the biggest star in the company.
Yep.
Who has got his own ideas, whether you think they're good or they're bad. The guy who's sharing this idea with you has made more money in the industry than anybody you've ever met in your life.
Yes.
So you got to kind of listen. And sometimes, and I still do this to this day, I'll get into it with somebody, and I may see things completely differently, creatively or even business-wise, strategically. And I'll fight and I'll fight and I'll fight to the point where my head's going to come off. And then I remind myself, fuck, I'm not right all the time. What if I'm wrong? What if this idea is a better idea? That just because I don't like it doesn't mean it won't work. And Kevin was faced with a lot of that with Hulk. Not a lot of it, I shouldn't say that. And I also want to make it clear, because I'm pretty sure I'm right about this. Again, I wasn't in the room, so I can't tell you firsthand. But I knew both of these guys pretty well and worked with both of them very closely for a long period of time. Kevin Sullivan loved this idea. He loved this idea. I was with him when we first met King Curtis over in Hawaii. It was the most bizarre, surreal experience of my life. There was a connection between Curtis and Hulk, but mostly Kevin, that must have gone way back to something important, because there was just a ton of genuine affection and respect between them. And I know that Kevin was excited as hell to work with Curtis in this role. And so was Hulk, because he dug Curtis. So I don't think anybody drug Kevin kicking or screaming into this, but I do see how he would have thought, okay, got an opportunity to work with King Curtis, and Kevin believed in him. He had worked with him in the past, had success with him. So it's not like you just hiring a buddy. There was a reason, right? And I think he looked at it and went, hey, I can achieve all things if we move forward with this. It doesn't really matter at this point. I think it's great to go back and look at it, especially now. And it puts a smile on my face. It should embarrass me. It doesn't. Maybe I've gotten over it. Maybe I've seen enough, Yeti clips on my social media feed that I've become numb to them. But it is pretty funny.
It is funny. I like it. I enjoy it. I think everybody else should too. I do want to ask you something. I'll admit I was not reading the Torch in this era, but in our preparation for today's episode, I wanted to thumb through the Torch and just see what Wade had to say about this Yeti debut. And what he really zeroed in on is something that I'll admit I just missed. And I get it's because I was watching it back without real context of the time period. But I guess Hulk Hogan does an interview immediately after this Yeti debut with the block of ice. And this is the Man in Black era of Hulk Hogan. Not quite the NWO, but he's got the black bandana. He's got the black gloves on. He's got the black shirt on. And he's doing an interview here with Mean Gene. And he says, my concerns this week have been about a lot of things, about what to do with the black gloves, the black bandana, and what to do with the Giant's carcass. Number one, after Detroit, brother, after everybody sees what I'm going to do with this nasty giant, just might hang on to the black gloves, brother, because everyone knows what a man with a pair of black gloves and a black rag on his head is capable of doing, dude. Now, I didn't think anything about this when I watched it back, but now I'm realizing when I read the Torch that this is like weeks before the decision in the O.J. Simpson trial. And I was
I didn't connect that, but I see it.
There's some criticism saying that, hey, we shouldn't have allowed Hulk Hogan to do this sort of promo in the Torch. I didn't see it at the time. I mean, I didn't draw the correlation is what I'm saying, but now I do get where Wade is going with this. And I know you and I have a lot of respect and appreciation for Wade, but what do you think of Wade's criticism? Should this have been allowed?
Oh, that's so hard, because you're looking back at something, 30 years ago, and applying today's kind of social boundaries to a period in time where those boundaries didn't exist and people weren't as sensitive about certain things. I'd have to go back and listen to the interview, but the way you read it to me, it was walking up against a line of good taste. But there was no direct references. He didn't threaten to kill anybody. I look, for everybody who thinks that professional wrestling should be a safe, sanitized, correct environment, go watch something else.
Yes.
This is people beating the piss out of each other theatrically.
Yes.
It's theatrical violence, people.
Yeah.
It's not socially correct theatrical violence, because that would be stupid. So I would have said that back to Wade then, and I still say it today. Quit applying standards that your HR VP would enforce in a corporate environment to scripted violence. It's stupid, people. Stupid.
Well, something else that's stupid was the Yeti. And we had a lot of fun talking about that. And I know that they're going to be talking about it as we get closer and closer to Halloween. So I'm excited to reveal, Eric, that I've recently had a chance to sit down and catch up with the Yeti himself for an exclusive conversation for adfreeshows.com. And I thought to myself, what better way to debut a clip of that upcoming piece of footage coming to adfreeshows.com than right here, right now, as we're talking about the Yeti. Let's take a look. So you get to work with Chris Benoit on Nitro. You work with him in Disney.
Yeah.
You even worked with Randy Savage on Nitro in Chattanooga.
Yeah.
And then a WCW side.
That was the night of the fake Sting.
Okay, tell me about that.
I just remember we were in the locker room and they kept it very undercover about the fake Sting. and we were watching the monitor, and they went out there and they did the fake Sting in the parking lot.
Okay. And that's what inspires him to become the Crow character. So that was that show. That's cool.
And I literally thought the fans were going to tear the place apart. They were so pissed that Sting had screwed them.
Yeah.
And then Jeff Farmer came in later, and he had the stuff on, and was like, "What? Oh my God, it's you faking!" I mean, they almost worked the boys, you know.
I know you had a lot of TV matches against these big stars. Run through some of those with me. Benoit, Luger, Savage, Jeff Jarrett. Does any stand out above all the others of your singles matches on
so
TV?
My job at that time was whoever the Big Show was facing or the Giant was facing at the pay-per-view. I wrestled them on Monday or Thursday night, and then they would beat me, and they'd be like, "Hey, I just beat this big guy. I'm ready for another big guy." And then the Giant would squash him.
I love talking about the good old days of some of the silliness of WCW. We are going to be having that entire interview posted at adfreeshows.com. If you haven't already, go check us out. You'll see there's over 100,000 hours of bonus content. You can do some live watch alongs, some live Q&As. We're just coming off a huge Top Guy weekend in St. Louis. Make plans to join us right now at adfreeshows.com and see what it's all about. You can even use our promo code TOPGUY75 and get 75% off your first month as a Top Guy. And in the coming weeks, I can tell you we've got a big event planned, and I won't exactly say when or where just yet, but it's going to be here before you know it. And I think we should have some announcements ready next week you don't want to miss. But right now, we're going to take a minute and talk a little bit about Mr. JL and some, that's Jerry Lynn, of course, and Dean Malenko and some other great wrestling action that happened on Nitro. But before we do, I want to give a quick plug right now for all of my folks out there who are looking to save a little money this holiday season. How about a Christmas vacation from House Payments? That's right. You won't have to make a payment in November or December. You're done until 2026. I can help you do that at savewithconrad.com. I've been helping people save money there for over 24 years. We've got hundreds of 5-star reviews as well, but it's a quick and easy experience to see how much money you can save right now for free at savewithconrad.com. All right, man, I got to tell you, I absolutely love my Ridge, and you will too. What I love about it is it's just one less thing to think about. I know that sounds silly, but Ridge really will be the last wallet you ever need. Not only do I love the way it looks, but it's so much more convenient. And what I love most of all is it's just something we don't have to think about as guys ever again. It's unique. It's slim. It's got a great modern design that'll hold up to 12 cards plus your cash. And it's also made with premium materials. They advertise aluminum and titanium, but I got to tell you, I got a carbon fiber one and I love it. My dad's got one. Jamie at the office has one. John has one. Steve has one. I've got every guy I know carrying a Ridge. They've got over 50 different colors and a ton of different styles to choose from. But what I love most about Ridge is, man, it was made for guys like us. Did you know that all of the Ridge products have a lifetime warranty? Yeah, buddy, this is the last wallet you'll ever have to buy. And let's be honest, you're carrying around a crusty leather brick in your back pocket right now. It's making your back feel wonky. I know we've all been there before, but it also gives you some peace of mind with Ridge because they have RFID blocking technology that's going to keep you safe from digital pickpocketers. And don't just take my word for it, man. Ridge has over 100,000 5-star reviews. You hear me? That's more people than were at WrestleMania 3 and All In. 100,000 5-star reviews. Are you kidding? Losing your wallet is the worst, but with the Ridge AirTag attachment, you'll always know exactly where it is before panic mode kicks in. Maybe you didn't know this, but Ridge isn't just about wallets. They create premium everyday carry essentials like key cases, suitcases, rings, all built with the same sleek, durable design. No matter what you pick, Ridge has free shipping, a 99-day risk-free trial, and a lifetime warranty on all of their products. I just can't get over the lifetime warranty. This is it, man. Buy one last wallet and you're done for life. And what a great product it is when they say, try it for 99 days. And if you don't love it, we'll hook you up. What? Like, you know, it's a great product. Right now, for a limited time, you can even get a great deal. You see, our listeners will get 10% off at Ridge by using the code 83weeks at checkout. Just head on over to RIDGE.com. That's ridge.com. And use the code 83weeks and you're all set. After you purchase, they're going to ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. So, hey, Mr. JL, we know that's actually Jerry Lynn. He's teaming with Eddie Guerrero here to take on Chris Benoit and Dean Malenko. And this to me is what I think made Nitro stand out. And the idea that this match with these 4 performers happened right down the road for me right now where I'm recording in Huntsville, Alabama. What a treat this was in 1995. And this is such a stark contrast to what's happening on the other channel when you've got in-ring performers like Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit and Dean Malenko and Jerry Lynn. I mean, this is really, really special stuff. And of course, we're going to have some silliness here because we are going to have Alex Wright get involved and Brian Pillman's going to attack him. And there's some storyline. You see the picture in a picture with the shark in the background doing a brawl with Scott Norton. But the cruiserweights are such a stark contrast to the Dungeon of Doom. I mean, I guess it's like Dusty used to say, right? It should be like a buffet. There's something for everybody.
I mean, this is a perfect illustration of that. And that perspective was something that we talked about and it was discussed weekly, right? When we were booking shows to make sure we at least attempted to provide that kind of buffet variety that Dusty, talked about. But what I was going to, first of all, I want to just point out Ron Reese is one of the nicest people you'll ever meet.
Yes.
He is the definition of gentle giant. He is just a wonderful human being, and it's great to see him and hear his voice again. And I'm going to check that interview out because he's a quality human being, and I hope everybody else checks it out as well. This period of time that we're talking about right now, this is fascinating to me. When we go back and cover a show or we cover a pay-per-view, as I've said many times before, it all kind of runs together. I produced over 5,000 hours of television, half of it live. I don't know how many pay-per-views over the course of however many years. And they all kind of blend together. That's why sometimes it's difficult for me to remember timelines because it all runs together. I need reference points in order to do that sometimes. But the period of time between the launch of Nitro, September 4th, 1995, through up into Scott Hall's first appearance, May 27th, 1996. That window is, for me, one of the most interesting periods in my career because we were literally, and you can see it, you can watch it for about a year if you go back and watch it chronologically. If you start looking at the changes in the format, you start seeing more and more of the elements that differentiated us from WWE. They're teens and preteens. We're going after 18 to 49. Yes, we still had some Dungeon of Doomish stuff in there. We still had some cartoony stuff in there. We still did some lighthearted, goofy shit in there. But the focus of the show began to shift in 95 and continued to evolve and led up to the NWO. So if you go back and you just look at that format and look at the things that we were really doing differently than our competition, and I encourage people that can, if you have access to the platform, is go back and watch a WWE Monday Night Raw from whatever the date was of this. What was the date of the show?
October 23rd, 1995.
Okay. So if you go back and you look at October 23rd, 1995 Raw, same date Nitro, and don't get so lost in the matches other than looking at the difference between the presentation of what WWE was doing and the presentation of WCW. And then just watch that evolve over the course of about a year. And it really started to change about halfway through. Yeah, 3/4 of the way through 95 is when it really started changing because we could just see the reaction of the audience. What are they reacting to? What are the quarter hours telling us? What is the live attendance telling us? That's really your best resource is going to the venue and sitting out in the people. Don't sit back in the gorilla position because you don't feel it the same way there. But if you pay attention to the audience, they'll tell you what they really like and what they don't like. And we were starting to pay attention to that during this period of time as we really tried to evolve the format and get that better than, less than, different than strategy kind of bred into the show.
It really was an interesting dynamic to see what was happening on Raw versus what was happening on Nitro, because this match is going to finish. The one we're talking about is Jerry Lynn teaming with Eddie Guerrero, taking on Chris Benoit and Dean Malenko. Mr. JL gets a pinfall victory which is kind of a cool deal here. He pins Dean Malenko with a victory roll. I say it's a cool deal because we know that Malenko is going to be a long timer for WCW. Mr. JL, not so much, but it does feel like that wasn't always the case because he's getting a win on TV here. Meanwhile, what is happening on the other channel? Well, it's the #1 Intercontinental title contendership match. It's a 20-man battle royal with Bam Bam Bigelow, 1-2-3 Kid, Bob Holly, King Kong Bundy, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Kama the Fighting Machine, Henry Godwin the Pig Farmer, Skip the Body Donna, Duke the Dumpster Drose, Barry Horowitz, there you go, Aldo Montoya, Marty Jannetty, Rad Radford, Jean-Pierre Lafitte, Savio Vega, Hakushi, Owen Hart, Fatu, Psycho Sid, and not Kane, but the evil dentist, Dr. Isaac Yankum DDS. Some absolute silliness. So while everybody wants to come for you about the Dungeon of Doom, can we talk about the fucking garbage man and the evil dentist and all the other bullshit happening on the other channel?
You know what the frustrating part is? Those silly, I mean, that was silliness, right? That was teen, preteen, kiddie cartoon crap from an adult's perspective. But because, going back to what we talked about earlier, but because WWE had a licensing machine and merchandising machine in place, they were making money off that silly shit.
They were
making a lot of money off that silly shit. In fact, I often thump my chest. The name of the show is 83 Weeks because we beat WWE 83 weeks in a row. We beat them a lot more than 83 weeks. Maybe not a lot more, but I think
100 and some odd weeks.
It was 104, right?
Yeah.
But even during that period of time when we were just from a ratings perspective, bitch slapping Vince McMahon and WWE and their entire roster, they were kicking our ass financially. With a lesser product, as goofy as some of that stuff was at that time, they were still driving a lot of revenue that WCW wasn't driving because they had that mature licensing and merchandising infrastructure in place.
We should mention this is the Monday Night Nitro that happens one night after In Your House #4. In Your House #4 happened the night before in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. They had 10,000 fans in attendance to see the British Bulldog and Diesel for the world title. It ended in a DQ, and it was so frustrating. I remember Bruce telling me the story that he was frustrated. Vince was frustrated, throwing the headset after. Nash was frustrated. Bulldog was frustrated. And I think part of their frustration was they knew that you guys were coming. They heard the footsteps, and they knew this product is not what we're looking for. That undercard on pay-per-view included Goldust versus Marty Jannetty, King Mabel versus Yokozuna, Razor Ramon versus Dean Douglas. So listen, capable performers, nice guys, but not exactly WWE at its best. And you couldn't help but take a shot at that. When Mike Tenay is going to plug the 900 number here on Nitro, which I know from memory, 1-900-909-9900, he's referencing the In Your House results. And Mongo says, you mean In Your Outhouse? They have to move that thing. It's beginning to stink. And you added, as my buddy John Cougar would say, when the walls come tumbling down. This is fun stuff. You and Mongo are having a blast with this, aren't you?
I miss Mongo's sense of humor, man. He was dry. He would say the corniest shit. And sometimes he'd say it, you wouldn't quite get it because his sense of humor is so dry sometimes. And it would hit you like a minute later. You'd be in the middle of a sentence. Oh, that's good, Mongo. I miss him. He was fun. He was fun to do commentary with. He was raw. I didn't find Steve McMichael. Harvey Schiller did, my boss. Met Steve at a Bears game function or something like that, and called me and said, "Hey, I knew who Steve was. I lived in Minnesota during the Vikings battles with the Chicago Bears, so I certainly knew who he was." But he said, "Hey, I got this. Steve McMichael's interested in doing commentary. Would you be interested?" It's like, hell yeah! And the first thing I thought of was, I've used this kind of comparison before, but I was looking for my John Madden. I was looking for that guy, not so much from a wrestling knowledge perspective, but that sense of humor, that spontaneity and ability to take a situation and have fun with it. that was why I was excited about Steve, and he fit that so well. Him and Mark Madden. Mark Madden was my other guy that I really wanted to feel like John Madden, right? Mark came really close because Mark was more controversial than John Madden ever was as a commentator. But Steve McMichael had that Madden sense of humor sometimes, and I loved it.
Let's also mention that we've got one more match here on Nitro. It's Sting and Lex Luger wrestling Harlem Heat. Buddy, that's a main event anywhere in the country. You want to talk about four guys at their best. I think you could argue this is peak for all of those guys. Sherry's at ringside. She's going to pull out Polaroids of her with Colonel Robert Parker. Eventually, the Giant's going to run in and attack Sting and Luger with choke slams. Hogan's going to come in the ring and ask Randy Savage to leave and let him face the Giant alone, one-on-one. And before you know it, the Dungeon and Savage are going to enter the ring for some chaos. And as the show is going off the air, the ice block explodes. Yes, this is the Yeti's ice block. And we are just days away from Halloween Havoc. So that's the Go Home Nitro. What a visual. I hope you're watching with us at 83weeks.com to see Ron Reese come out of the thing. And what's great is we talk about this in our interview, Eric, of what instruction he was given or not given. And you got to see this. It's a great interview coming soon to adfreeshows.com. But what was happening on the other channel after that battle royal? Well, they debuted Al Snow under a hood as Avatar, and he got a win over Brian Walsh. And then the main event was Alundra Blaze. Eventually, she'll be Medusa here in WCW. And she beat Bertha Faye with Harvey Whippleman to win the WWF Women's Championship, which you will see on Nitro soon enough. But that's what they were doing on Raw. I got to say, you won the show. And you're one night removed from the WWF pay-per-view. And don't just take my word for it. You won the ratings as well. It comes out when we look the ratings up. You guys got a 2.6 that night, and Monday Night Raw got a 2.2. So they're fresh off of a pay-per-view. You think that their viewership would be at an all-time high. You're on your way to a pay-per-view, and instead you win. So with all the criticism there is to go around about the Yeti or the Dungeon of Doom or Halloween Havoc 95, you beat Raw the night after their pay-per-view. That's pretty good.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
That's an interesting stat. And I think it, to me at least, it illustrates. And again, this goes back to what I said. Just because I don't like something doesn't mean other people don't like it, right? It's a very dangerous position for a television producer to put themselves in, is to produce for yourself. If you start to think that because you like something or an idea, checks all the boxes for your creative perspective, right? Because it's all subjective. It's all individual. But if you are so convinced that your shit is always right, you're going to produce for yourself, you won't be in that business for very long. You learn the hard way that it's not true. And interestingly enough, we're new. Now, keep in mind, there was probably enough buzz on us because we did go head to head and we were competitive. And, there was a lot of shit going on that would have driven, although it was before the internet. So, limited amount of it. But there was enough of a buzz on it for us to draw an audience. But it's really interesting to go back and listen to commentary about those shows back then and then listen to the numbers, because today, to relate it to today, it's so easy for the internet wrestling community, you know what I think of most of them, because subjectively they as a group shit on something. It may work great for the other 95% of the viewing audience because the internet wrestling community is not the tastemaker that they think they are.
Right.
And it's really easy sometimes if you're too influenced by that community and the opinions of that community to lose sight of the fact that if you just produce for that segment of the audience, for people with that perspective, you're likely missing out on 80 or 90% of the rest of the audience. And I think this is a perfect example. WWE was far more established, had much bigger stars, had been around in prime time a lot longer. We were still figuring shit out as we were going. We didn't even know we were going to launch this show 6 months before we did. So there was a lot of work in progress going on, but we still beat them. We were competitive. When you're talking about a margin like that, 2.6 to 2.2 or whatever it was, that's a rounding error. It really doesn't mean much. what it does say is we were competitive at an early stage, and I'm proud of that.
Well, something I know you're not proud of is that you sometimes get in the muck and mire with Dave Meltzer on social media, and it looks like you had a dust up earlier this week. Meltzer has been tweeting about you, and you've been tweeting about Meltzer. What's going on, Eric?
Oh, yeah, nothing. I just, it was not less. It was, I was on a flight. I was bored. And I'm just, I'm going through my timeline. Part of it is to stay on top of what's going on in wrestling, knowing that, we're here to talk about that. And I am fairly busy, so I don't have a lot of time to do deep dives into stuff. So I'm surfing my stuff, and I'm beginning to recognize how many, and as much as I bust balls for the internet wrestling community because the vast majority of them deserve it, but there are still people in that community that really know what they're talking about, that understand their shit, and are in so many fans now who are really into that community, but aren't like drinking the Dave Meltzer purple Kool-Aid nonsense, that are actually looking at things objectively. The number of people that are calling Dave Meltzer out for his silly shit is just inspiring to me, because there's so much actual knowledge out there. The wrestling audience no longer those who are really interested in the behind the scenes stuff no longer have to reply on a single source idiot like Dave Meltzer or any number of other, at the time, dirt sheets. Now you've got real people, Raj Giri being one of them. We call him an analyst. Is he part of the internet wrestling community? Sure he is. So am I, by the way. But he's smart. He's run a business. He's built a business. He's sold a business. He knows the wrestling business. So when you've got guys like Raj, my agent Nick over at Paradigm, you've got people who really know the business calling out Dave on his bullshit. I just find it refreshing. I think it's great. I think it's the evolution of the internet wrestling community as more and more fans get smart to the fact that Dave doesn't really know what he's talking about. He's wrong more than he's right. And he is really one of the most out of touch people I've ever heard commentate on a modern television product. It's bizarre, but people are starting to recognize that. And that's reassuring to me.
You tweeted out, I've been preoccupied and not spent much time wallowing in the muck that is the ever-devolving segment of social media known as the IWC. My take, there will always be the segment of the wrestling audience that will want so badly to be recognized as having some unique insight or access, an insight to a business they fantasize they're a part of. Not unusual, really. What is unusual is the level of delusion that accompanies this phenomenon. Dave Meltzer is the most obvious example of completely out of touch, can there be any doubt, example. Between his delusional takes, desperate need to convince people he has access to inside information, he's more of a comedian at this point than a source. Grateful that social media and access to real info has exposed him. It's entertaining to watch. And then, of course, Meltzer couldn't help himself, and he says, Eric, you have a show on Saturday. Shouldn't you be promoting your wrestlers instead of talking that you've got the pro debut of the greatest woman wrestler in U.S. history? I'll do your job for you here. You're stuck in a weird obsession that dooms your happiness. Anyone with half a brain sees through you, and you're stuck playing to the most naive. But you've got a company to run, and the only people who know the first thing about it and your show are the observer readers. So listen, I think it's funny that he's being critical of your. Respectfully, I think Dave Meltzer knows a lot about wrestling matches and knows a lot about wrestling history. I don't know that he knows a ton about
anything.
Well, major media companies, like, I don't know. This feels a little, I don't know. I don't know how to describe it, but I will say that
that's because you're a good person and you're a kind person and you don't want to hurt Dave's feelings because you respect Dave, and that's fine. Me, I don't give a fuck. You guys completely disconnected from reality. And, we're doing a fine job promoting. We'll probably see, 4,000 or 5,000 people here. It's our second event. Our television partners are excited as hell. We're talking about the things we're doing in 2026 already. So, Dave, I'm good. I appreciate your concern, but I think we're good.
I just think it's interesting that, I do like Dave and I like Dave's work, but it's very obvious that he has a bias at times. Like the idea that, I mean, you've told me the real life behind the scenes success of Real American Freestyle. I'm speaking, of course, not just about ticket sales, but the relationship with Fox Nation. And I know that not all of that is public, so I'm not saying anything, but I am just saying we know how well it's going. And for him to be like, it's not going well and no one knows about it and you're not doing your job, it's like he doesn't even have a frame of reference to say that. Where does that come from?
Well, because he's out of touch. It's hard to imagine. You've got to use your imagination. Look, if you notice, we're not promoting Real American Freestyle to the pro wrestling audience. I mean, we'll talk about it here, but we made a decision for now to really focus on the amateur wrestling side, the amateur wrestling fan base as much as we can. We want to reach everybody. Don't get me wrong. We've got local TV running. We've got local radio running. Fox has got national TV running. I guess if you want to knock Fox Nation or Fox Corporate, because those spots are seen all over across Fox platforms. If you want to suggest that Fox isn't promoting, maybe, Dave, you should take such an amazing knowledge of the industry over to Fox and talk to them, because they're running national ads and things are going just fine. But Dave doesn't understand the business, and that's the part. I guess the reason that I'm entertained by people exposing just exactly what Dave doesn't know and doesn't have access to is because for so long he's conned people into thinking he does. And it's really ironic. I never spent much time thinking about the word projection. I've heard it used a number of times in a number of different ways and completely understand it, but it's never a thought or a concept or a word that I've ever used to or never assigned to somebody. But I think with Dave, projection is a big part of who he is. For 25, 30 years, whatever it's been, he's been calling people, wrestling promoters are con men.
Yes.
Frauds. I'm a grifter. Dave, what are you? You've spent your career milking people out of money, convincing them that you have access to information or you have knowledge that you clearly don't have. And it's becoming abundantly transparent at this point. I mean, you can't look and listen and read what comes out of Dave Meltzer's scrambled brains and think that he's got any kind of a feel for this business. The only people that feel that way are that lowest common denominator, that part of the internet wrestling community that is so desperate to feel like they're connected to something and they have inside information about something, in this case, professional wrestling. And the only way that they can get that edge, to get that knowledge, is through a guy like Dave Meltzer. And he charges them $15 a month to get it. 50% off most of the time, but you know the point. And I think that's a fraud. I think that's a con. I think that's grift. And it's interesting how much time Dave has spent over the years calling anybody that calls him out a con man, a fraud, or a grifter, when in fact, Dave is the classic example in this industry of a fraud, a con man, and a grifter.
To be clear, I know you were painting with some broad strokes on your flight to State College, but I don't think when you were referencing the IWC that you were necessarily talking about Sean Ross Sapp at Fightful or Mike Johnson at PW Insider or Brandon Thurston at WrestleNomics or John Pollock at Post Wrestling. You get where I'm going. You don't mean all of these folks. You have an issue specifically with Dave Meltzer and maybe his disciples.
No, and Nick, my agent. In fact, the reason that I was motivated to write that, to post that tweet, was because Nick had posted something earlier on that was really astute. It was a great observation. Nick's got a really good handle on what's going on at WB and all the potential ramifications of that. And Nick is a perfect example of someone. He's in the entertainment business. He's a lawyer that happens to be an agent that's in the entertainment business and represents some of the top stars in WWE. So to think that Nick doesn't have an inside track to a lot of things that are going on that we as fans, even though you and I both have friends in WWE, he's got information I don't have because it's a part of his business. And there are more and more people like that coming forward to the industry in the internet wrestling community that are bringing valid, credible information and knowledge and sharing it freely. He's not even charging $14.99 a month to do it, right? So that's why I wrote that. And in fact, Nick is the one that pointed out, and I can't remember it verbatim, but essentially what Nick said is, hey, there's a lot of great information out there from Mike Johnson, from PW Insider, from Sean Rossap. Give your money to them. Just don't give it to this out of touch whack. There are good sources of information out there, and there are people that do their best to bring you credible, accurate information and leave their personal weirdness out of it. Dave can't separate himself from his weird takes on shit. He's got a very unique, I'll use the word unique instead of weird. He's got a very, very unique perspective that probably only a small single-digit percentage of the people that watch wrestling would ever agree with.
All right, guys, I got some exciting news for you. Remember my friend Steven Singer? You know, the I Hate Steven Singer guy. Well, as you already know, Steven Singer is the most hated jeweler in America. Well, by other jewelers, that is. Now, why is that? Because he has the best guarantees, the best warranties, and all at the perfect price. Of course, I'm talking about IHateStevenSinger.com. 365 days a year, man. They're going to get you a great deal. No phony baloney sales, no fake discounts, no stupid pricing games, no nonsense, no bullshit ever. Just easy and fun. And that's why Steven Singer is a real jeweler that you can trust. Steven Singer Jewelers was just named one of America's leading jewelers. You may not know this, but there's like 18,000 jewelers in America, and less than 50 have received this honor. Just another reason why most jewelers absolutely hate Steven Singer. No one does real diamond jewelry better. Experience the difference right now at Steven Singer Jewelers. Online at IHateStevenSinger.com, always with fast and free shipping. That's IHateStevenSinger.com. It's great for birthdays. It's great for anniversaries. It's great for the holidays coming up. It's great just because, man, you're going to love IHateStevenSinger.com, and you're going to see why all the other jewelers hate him. No bullshit. This is the guy. It's who I use. It's who you should use. Go right now. IHateStevenSinger.com.
It's time for the Wrestling News Update with Raj Giri.
And we are live with Raj Giri for this week's wrestling update. You've got all the scoops and all the news. We're going to get it straight from the horse's mouth. Welcome to the show, Mr. Raj Giri. Raj, how are you, man?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on again.
No, we're excited to be on with you and excited to hit some headlines. I got to ask you, right before we actually went live with this show, I saw a report from WrestleNomics about TKO ticket prices. Can you tell us what's going on with that?
Yeah, I mean, basically what we've kind of already known, right, is that ticket prices have been going up under TKO a lot. And, you know, an interesting thing in that article is that ticket sales are actually up from last year and the year before. So even with the increased ticket prices, the number of tickets being distributed have been going up. So, you know, it's one of those things we've talked about on this show before, where it seems like ticket prices may have been a little underpriced before under Vince, but then again, under Vince, the product didn't get as hot until really after he started, until he was kind of ousted from creative. So it's tough to say, but, you know, they've seen with UFC what they can charge. Obviously, they're trying to shift WWE into that area, and we'll see if they can get there. I mean, you know, I was looking at prices for the Denver SmackDown coming up next month, and it's probably about double what I've ever seen for that show, at least. So it's going up, but, you know, home prices and football tickets and everything have been going up as well. But it was noted in that article that WWE tickets are going up at a faster rate. It seems like they're trying to make up for lost time, and we'll see. You know, I know some people are like, can this sustain? And until people stop buying tickets, obviously it can.
I mean, doesn't it make sense, Raj and Conrad? I mean, you have a product. It's a widget, and you sell that widget. People go, "Wow, I really like that widget." So you raise the price a little more, and they go, "Whoa, I want more of those widgets." And you keep building widgets, and you keep increasing that price until you find your threshold. And then once you find your threshold, you then begin to adjust your prices accordingly. Meaning, you'll have your sales. You'll reduce ticket prices if research indicates that you're starting to drop off. Ticket sales are starting to decline. But until you know where that is, I'm not shocked, but it's interesting to me that people are surprised that any company will continue to increase the price of the product until they find that threshold.
Yeah, we've seen it in the past with pay-per-view. Like I remember when Mayweather fought McGregor and fought Pacquiao, and the pay-per-view price was like $100, and people were like, "Oh, this is just too much. They've gone way too far," and it ended up being the biggest pay-per-views of all time. So if there's a demand for it, people will pay. I know it's tough for others who want to go and they're feeling like they're outpriced and they've been fans of the product for a long time. But the one thing is, if there's a demand for these tickets, if WWE doesn't or TKO doesn't charge these prices, StubHub and the other ticket brokers will. So they'll collect those tickets and sell those at a higher price. So
another really good point.
Yeah. So whether it's AEW, whether it's WWE, if you underprice your tickets, someone else is going to overprice it.
I wonder how WWE ticket sales compare to, it's hard to come up with comps, but rock and roll, concerts. What if ticket prices done over the last 12 months on a percentage basis compared to what WWE has done in the past 12 months on a percentage basis? It'd be interesting to see what other forms of value entertainment that people actually go to, what those ticket prices have been tracking like. Because I can tell you from our own experience in only 2 events of Real American Freestyle, I am absolutely shocked when I look at some of the prices for buildings that I previously worked in and produced television in. I mean, it's a different world today financially than it was even 8 years ago. So, I mean, everybody's got to eat those costs, and they're passing them on to the consumer. So with all the research people like to do and analysis, it'd be fun to see somebody compare, the top 5 rock and roll shows and ticket prices over the last 12 months and compare that to WWE's ticket price increase and see where they sit.
Raj, 22 years ago, Charlie Munger was actually quoted as saying, he was quoting his friend Bill, and he said he was ahead of the Beckman Instruments, and it produced some complicated product where it failed and it caused enormous damage to the purchaser. It wasn't a pump at the bottom of an oil well, but that's a good mental example. And he realized that the reason this thing was selling so poorly, even though it was better than anybody else's product, was because it was priced lower. It made people think it was a low quality gizmo. So he raised the price by 20% or so, and the volume went way up. And I know that's been the case with the UFC. Like when the UFC first started to take off, and because I was going to UFC before it was really popular. I'm not trying to be that guy, but I'm just saying I remember affordably priced tickets. I sat front row at UFCs, and I bought them on third parties like StubHub, and they were like $1,000 a seat, and that's third party. You can't get anywhere close to that now. But I was there in those arenas, and they were not full. Now that the ticket prices are astronomical, they are full. It feels like this thing to aspire to. It feels like a more important night out. It feels like now it's easier to get a ticket to Hamilton, but I saw it in 2016 when it was the hot ticket and it was a hard ticket to get. It was packed, and it was because it was hard to get. It was because it was expensive. There is something with human psychology there that is at play here with these tickets, don't you think?
Absolutely. And you see that when a concert comes, or like you mentioned, Hamilton, when you know it's something that's going to sell out quick, that builds your own excitement, like it builds that anticipation for that event. It's just human nature. And, you're absolutely right. We went to Taylor Swift a couple of years ago, and I remember the amount that they're charging on the secondary market was multiple times of what, Taylor Swift was charging on Ticketmaster. And so that's all revenue. And that's not going to her. That's going to these other outlets. So, it's all supply and demand at the end. And what we've seen, because at that same WrestleNomics article, they noted that AEW ticket prices have gone down this year and their attendance has gone down. So WWE price has gone up and their attendance has gone up. Now, I do think ultimately with pro wrestling, there is going to be, a level that you hit where it does start to come down, and we might be getting there sooner than later, but I just haven't gotten there yet. So it's smart business. I know it looks greedy to a lot of people, but it just makes all the sense in the world looking from the outside in, as far as a financial decision.
Well, I'm interested to see how the rest of the wrestling world processes that information, because it does feel like the exact opposite of what people expected. And I'll admit, I was a little shocked last week when I looked and I saw that John Cena's last match was not sold out.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remembered, wait a minute, this is the new TKO. They've jacked the prices up. Prices are way high. And now on some level, Eric, even though this goes against the way Vince McMahon saw things, a sellout's almost a bad thing, because it makes you wonder, hey, did we price it too low? If you're going to sell out, you want to sell out like the day before or the day of. If it's an immediate sellout, maybe we left money on the table. What do you think of that, Eric?
Yeah, it's funny. I was looking at socials this morning in anticipation of the show, and I noticed, I think it's WrestleTix. I was looking at a WWE event. I think it was SmackDown in the middle of December, scaled for 16,000. They've only got 1,000 tickets left, something like that. And we're months out, month and a half out, whatever it is. I mean, yeah, you kind of wonder, where's that threshold? How much money am I leaving on the table? But as Raj pointed out, man, they're continuing to sell tickets. 3 months out, they'll be sold out probably weeks before the show.
How does this affect at all the AEW approach, Raj? We know that AEW has gone the other way when there was first speculation or talk of rising WWE ticket prices. I saw some local ads on social media that AEW was putting out talking about how affordable it was for a family. And every time Eric and I talk about this on social or even here in the comments on YouTube, we'll see comments from people who wanted to take their kids to see WWE, but they couldn't, even though they could a couple of years ago. Is that an opportunity for AEW, or in your opinion, or is it a mistake to target the lower, more affordable ticket prices?
Well, I think it's smart on AEW's part because, basically they're taking a negative, like a drop in ticket sales that they've experienced, but spinning it with a positive, like, hey, our competition is overpricing their tickets and we're bringing ours down. We're more family friendly. So you kind of switch the narrative. So in that respect, I think it's smart. We haven't seen it make a difference yet. And maybe it will, but ultimately what it comes down to is the product being hot and feeling hot. And until they get there, I don't think people are going to go, well, I'm not interested in this product, but tickets are only $60, so I'll go. Ultimately, you need to get them interested in wanting to go to the show.
Let's talk about the other big news this week, Raj. We've learned earlier this week that Warner Brothers Discovery is officially up for sale. Now, this is something that everybody in AEW and all their fans are certainly paying attention to, myself included. We heard earlier in the year that they were going to do some sort of a split, Warner this way, Discovery that way, and we're just shuffling some assets. I think this is all just to avoid some red ink. And then we hear maybe they're going to be doing a deal with Paramount to merge, but now it looks like they're up for sale. What does this mean? What do you expect?
Yeah, well, Paramount, originally did make an offer. I think it was $20 a share, which was obviously low. And that's what you do in these situations is you start low and then get to the right sale price. So, and it's smart for WBD to not just be accepting one offer, to open it up. Netflix has kind of been downplaying the idea that they're interested. If one would think if they were interested, it wouldn't be on the linear side, which includes TBS, TNT, and everything. It would just be for the movie studio and HBO Max side of the company. So, this is one of those things where the ramifications of this could be huge. I mean, no one knows this better than Eric of what like a sale can do. And if the new executives are not fans of the product or have a different view of what their goals should be and what their programming should be, it could change things dramatically. And that's why, sometimes when I see stuff like, on the pay-per-view last week where they have people stuffing people's heads in fish tanks, and it's like not a big deal for wrestling fans. We've seen stuff that's worse, but at a time when there's going to be a lot of uncertainty and you want to I would think make your brand more advertiser friendly and more media company friendly. Like you want the executives for these other companies to look and be like, this looks like a product that would fit on our stations. And AEW has had a magnificent relationship with WBD. But once you get new owners in there, that could all go out the window quick.
When you not only have the subjective nature of what you're talking about, meaning the violence and drowning people on paper, whatever. You're right, man. We've seen stuff that crazy and worse. So in the business has survived. But what's interesting to me, and this is not me trying to say I told you so, but I did tell you so. And years ago, probably 3 or 4 years ago, my position was if Tony Khan doesn't learn and commit to growing his audience and growing his business, there will come a point in time when he's going to get the plug pulled out of him. You have to show some growth. If you've got new owners coming in, because it's all going to come down to math. It's just math, folks. Nobody loves wrestling enough or hates it enough to make a decision based necessarily on their personal taste, but they will let their personal taste influence the way they interpret the math. Meaning, can you sell this stuff? What's ad sales doing with it? What has the audience done over the last 12 months? What's the audience done over the last 36 months? Is there any reason to hope or believe that this franchise, this property, has the potential for growth? And if there is a reason, please identify it. And let's determine whether or not it will create enough growth to make this thing financially viable, because it's not. I don't care what anybody says. I ain't buying a $185 million deal anymore. I never did. It's bullshit. It's a chunk of money plus a lot of promotional time that has a valuation that is part of that $185 million. It's not $185 million bills. So let's just get past that part. Well, if the ratings are I just saw something this morning. They premiered at 1,403,000 or something like that. And they're at about 400,000 today on average, or 500, whatever the number is. What is a potential new owner going to look at that's going to suggest to them, yeah, but this is going to turn around because this guy here, this Tony Cat, he knows what he's doing. Or these creative people over here, they've really got a handle on this. In fact, look at what they've done over the last 6 months. There's hope. It doesn't exist. So they're in a precarious situation. And on top of it, they do such distasteful stuff that it turns away whatever advertisers they do have.
Yeah. With Guy Evans's Nitro book, you have executive after executive in there talking about how wrestling needs to overperform other sports and other forms of entertainment. Years ago, Young Rock got much lower ratings than SmackDown, but would get higher ad rates. So, and now with the new rating system, and then wrestling ratings are even lower, I think it's more important now than ever to really look at that growth and really look at, are we doing everything we can to turn this thing around? And time will tell. It hasn't been, and it's easier said than done. But you need to overperform. A .11, that is what Dynamite did last week. 18 to 49 rating. That's very different than a .11 NHL game rating.
Right.
You really have to be like double or triple to get even close to the same ad rates. So you have to overperform, and right now with this new rating system, the ratings are just looking uglier, and at a time when there's obviously going to be a lot of shifting in the media landscape.
All right, guys, let's talk about our wiener meats. All of these episodes are brought to you by Blue Chew. They're a day one sponsor. And why is that? Well, because it really works. You see, Blue Chew is not just a tablet. It's like a cheat code for your crotch. It's a hot tag for your wiener. They're going to get your dick stronger, harder, and longer lasting, like somebody gave your gimmick a downstairs pep talk and a gym membership. Blue Chew is the original brand that offers you chewable tablets for better sex. Just and then tear it up, buddy. Hey, you ever tried to tuck in a submarine? It's hard, almost as hard as you'll be with Blue Chew. Guys, we're not just talking about performance. We're talking about getting a little nitro energy in that wiener meat. This is about your legacy or your third leg. Let's see. Give her a group chat something to talk about. Nothing makes you more of a Hall of Famer than a little Blue Chew. Discover your options at bluechew.com and go take her fucking breath away. And or his. Hey, no judgment here. We've got a special deal for our listeners. As always, get your first month of Blue Chew free. Just use the promo code 83 weeks at checkout and pay $5 for shipping. That's it. Join Blue Chew's mission to upgrade humanity one thrust at a time. Head on over to bluechew.com for details and important safety information. And a big thanks to Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast. Let's talk a little bit about some contract stuff. This is always interesting, and I think people always go back to the Monday Night Wars when they hear about things like this. Eric, I'm not sure if you saw, but Andrade El Idolo, my former brother-in-law, he was quietly released from WWE, I don't know, several weeks ago. And there was rumor and innuendo that he had ghosted them, and there were other reports that perhaps he had not one, not two, but 3 failed wellness violations. I don't know exactly what the real story was, but that's what the chatter was. And then all of a sudden, he shows up on Dynamite under a mask, and he attacks Kenny Omega. So I think fans immediately assumed, hey, he's been with CML in the past. He's been with New Japan in the past. He's going to be in this Forbidden Door. It'll be Andrade versus Kenny Omega in St. Louis. Then we never saw him again. And the report came out, I believe, Raj, that WWE sent a cease and desist. I guess there's a new version of these contracts where the TKO contract is different from the old one. What's going on there, Raj?
Well, this is the thing, is normally when there's a WWE release that we've always seen, there's a 90-day non-compete. And so I think a lot of people assume it means you're released and then you have 90 days, right? But that's not the case. You're still under contract with WWE for those 90 days. Now, was that unclear on Andrade's contract? Was it, because almost every other contract has had that. So that's where it gets a little weird. So yeah, Andrade appearing then on Dynamite would be a breach of contract because he technically would have still been under WWE contract at that point. Now, WWE having this clause that there's a 1-year non-compete, now that's where it gets dicey, because is he being paid during that time? Because that changes things a little bit. But if you look at non-complete clauses over time, you'll see a bunch of instances where like a 1 to 2 year contract, a non-compete is deemed enforceable. But then once you get longer and longer than that, that's where it gets dicey. Brock Lesnar famously, in 2005, he agreed to leave WWE to go start an NFL career and agreed to sign a 10-year non-compete. Obviously, the NFL thing didn't work out, and Brock fought in court, and it was dropped. So there are going to be terms and contract durations where the judges are going to be like, this isn't fair. Now,
and so much of it depends on, Raj, and I've been on both sides of it.
Mm-hmm.
No, I've only been on one side of it. I've never tried to sue anybody or get out of a non-compete personally,
Mm-hmm.
but I've been involved in the process, and every jurisdiction is different.
Mm-hmm.
Every judge in every jurisdiction is going to, so obviously in WWE's case, they're probably using Connecticut as, the state in which these things need to be fought out, or Florida, wherever it is. California, for example, good luck enforcing a non-compete in California.
Mm-hmm.
Good luck. Florida, good luck.
Alabama,
try enforcing that shit. In certain states, you'll get laughed out of. Judge won't even talk to you. But there are states that will. So I think, and again, I mentioned my agent, Nick, he had a really good breakdown of this, the non-compete scenario. And it really comes down to, do you have the money and the time to challenge it? If you do, you'll probably win. You'll burn a bridge in the process, and you'll blow probably 150 to 250 grand in the process, depending on who you are and how hard you have to fight. But you'll probably win. Most people aren't willing to fight it. They'll just write it out. But it'll get challenged eventually. And I've had attorneys where I wanted to challenge it, and I wanted to fight, that were attorneys that were working for me, just tell me it's not worth it. Don't fight it. It's not worth it. Chances are you're going to lose. So somewhere along the line, somebody's going to challenge it, and it'll get modified.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of been on the same boat, Eric. I've sold websites in the past and businesses where I have non-competes that vary from 2 to 5 years, and they'd be so vague that sometimes an opportunity would come up, and I'm like, well, I feel like this shouldn't be upheld under this non-compete, but actually going to a lawyer and fighting it just wasn't worth it, because the amount of time that it would take to eventually even get out of it, it's just not worth it. So, again, we don't know if Andrade is getting paid or not. We don't know if they're actually upholding this 1-year non-compete, or if it's just in there and they're going through their legal department to see what's going to happen. How
did he end up on TV if he was under contract and had a non-compete?
Right. Yeah.
From the AEW side, how does that even happen?
I think they assumed that WWE just cut all contact with him when they released him and didn't enforce or didn't have a 90-day non-compete, which, again, just knowing how WWE has done business for the longest time, they've always had that in there when they release talent.
I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So it threw me off guard too, and I was like, okay, well, maybe it was just because of the disciplinary issue, and they just wanted their to be done with it. So again, I don't know if it's something that Andrade misunderstood or he didn't have his lawyers take a look at it, but it did seem very unusual.
I mean, I can understand Andrade not necessarily being fluent in contract language, right? Mm-hmm. Half the contracts I sign, I thank God I have attorneys, because I can't get through it. Yeah. Or retain half of it, even if I do get through it, right? Mm-hmm. So I can understand how the talent might have gotten confused. Mm-hmm. That's a stretch, but yeah, let's assume that he was just confused or didn't realize it for some reason. You still have the AEW side. I mean, they've got a responsibility to vet this, knowing that he was previously under contract and knowing that previously WWE was very strict about their non-competes. That's the part that makes me go, how the hell did that happen? Did you just take Andrade's word for it?
Yeah, that's the really confusing side. Is you would think their legal team would have been able to capture that part of the contract, because again, every WWE release that they brought on has had that stipulation in there. Now, obviously, if someone's contract expires, then they don't have that non-compete. Right. But if they were released, that's always been there. So I am surprised that they missed that. And I don't know if it was just one of those things that Andrade assured them and they just felt like they didn't need to take a look at it. But yeah, that's something you don't want to do, because you could get sued for that as well.
Yeah, there's tortious interference. There's all kinds of potential shit that actually costs 3 times more. So if there's damages and you can prove damages and it's tortious interference, now you're going to triple them. Triple those damages. So it is a serious issue, and one that is surprising to be honest, from AEW's perspective.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we're going to see any resolution on this anytime soon. I mean, my preliminary conversation, and it was just by text, was with Mike Dawkins, our gimmick attorney around here, and he sort of laid out the practicality of, hey, you could sue and push back here, but realistically, WWE has seemingly unlimited resources to fight this, and you're going to be on the sidelines the entire time anyway. So what is the risk reward here versus just waiting it out and finding some sort of middle ground? But I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't pretend to have any inside information, Eric, but if I was to venture a guess, it feels like if you are Andrade and you're using your wrestling brain, you're thinking, hey man, maybe I just reach out to someone in AEW, or I show up at the show and I say, hey, I'm free and clear. I can appear. Let's do something. And if he left on good terms and they have seen several other WWE contracts in the past, maybe they just made the assumption that, hey, he was good to go and we'll figure it out later. And I guess that's cease and desist. If that's just a guess on my end, but if that's really the way it went down, it doesn't like we're going to see him anytime soon. Do you think, Raj, it would be wise? Because I was sort of hinting at an individual performer would not want to sue WWE. Could this be something Tony Khan wanted to take interest in battling himself? Because obviously, if we're going to go dollar for dollar and spend on this silliness, that feels like WWF versus WCW, not necessarily former contractor versus parent company. Would this be a fight that would be interesting to Tony, or would he not pursue that, in your opinion?
I mean, just legal proceedings just cost so much money, and we've seen like over the past year, Tony like trying to cut expenses, you know, doing these residencies for Dynamite to save money. So he doesn't seem like he's in overspending mode. There have been a bunch of free agents that have opened up that he didn't sign that I think a couple of years ago he might have taken a look at. So I just don't think it's a fight worth fighting for him. There's not much to gain out of it.
I think in addition to the money, and I mean, Tony, if he wanted to spend the money, he could certainly spend the money and be competitive with WWE in the process when it comes to legal fees. But he's going to have to sit through depositions and discovery. Tony Khan does not want to sit through discovery or depositions. It's, even if you can afford it, it's a time suck. It's going to take up so much of your time and focus. I just don't think Tony wants it. I just can't imagine it would be worth it to him. This is not, I mean, it's no offense to Andrade. I don't mean this to sound like it's going to sound, because I can't help it, but this is not a guy that you're going to spend $500,000 in legal fees fighting for.
Mm-hmm. Well, to be clear, I wasn't suggesting that you're going to do it just for Andrade. I just mean in the future, for all future, contracts in the wrestling space, if someone leaves, because I mean, let's be real, as you said, it's going to be really hard to enforce in those individual states. But Eric, you've known a guy pretty well who had a wealthy billionaire in the background who sort of helped fund his legal case, and it worked out for everybody. So maybe Tony Khan is going to take a page out of that book. I don't know. I don't have any inside information.
It would be, you know what? I would be fascinated by that if that were to happen. That'd be an interesting one to watch, because it would end up creating a precedent. It would end up changing the way the business operates, potentially, or potentially Tony get his ass kicked to just walk away with an empty basket of an empty fruit basket. But it'd be interesting to see. I'd like to. I don't want to say I want to see a challenge, but if it comes, I'll be watching it closely because it'll be very impactful.
Just one more thing. I'm sorry. Just one thing. I don't know if Tony would want to be successful in this case, because remember, this is a breach of contract. This is a contracted WWE guy showing up on their show, and I'm sure Tony doesn't want a contracted AEW guy just feeling like they can show up on WWE TV.
There's that.
So you don't want that breach of contract thing. It can go both ways. So I just don't think you would want, that's something you want to happen to yourself.
It's a slippery slope. We also found out earlier this week that Samantha Irvin, who used to be a fantastic announcer for WWE, she still has a year left on her non-compete. She's been gone from the company for a year, Eric, but I guess that was part of the terms of her release. Is that the way you understood it, Raj?
Yeah, that's the way I understood it. It kind of seemed like a shortened version of the Brock Lesnar deal that he made when he was able to get out of his contract. And again, 2 years, it just seems like a long time, but it's one of those things when you agree to it to get out of your contract. I just think that's a tough one to fight. I'm sure there are some states where, like Eric mentioned, there are some states like California and other states where they probably let you out of that, but there are others that won't. And
why would she
expensive fight.
sign a 2-year non-compete? Why would she sign that?
Because the story goes, she didn't want to be an announcer. She wanted to be more involved and be a wrestling persona and be a character and be on the show. She didn't want to, quote unquote, just be the announcer. And so I guess she wanted to just, if they weren't going to give her that opportunity, she wanted to start doing that sooner rather than later. She just didn't enjoy being an announcer.
Okay.
It sounds like she had some outside projects.
And was willing to sit out for 2 years.
Yes.
Good for her.
Good for her indeed. I know you're on a time crunch here, Raj, but I do want to ask Seth Rollins, he's the big news right now. We saw he was injured at the most recent pay-per-view. They sort of fast-tracked Braun Breaker. They've taken the title off of Seth. It looks like now it's going to be Punk and Jey Uso. It felt like maybe they were planting seeds for a Jey Uso heel turn. What do you expect is next here for the world title and for Seth Rollins?
I do think it does freshen things up a little bit. I felt like the creative was kind of getting a little stale, and now all of a sudden you have all these different options. You can go with the heel Jey Uso, you could go with Punk, and then defending against Braun down the road. So it opens it up. I think Punk wins the title. I think I think Brock can use a little shot in the arm, and Punk has been a proven ratings draw, or at least in the past he has been. So I think it helps mix things up. We've seen Jey Uso as champion. We saw the Netflix numbers during his term, his reign. Not that they were bad or anything, but you didn't get any spikes or anything like that. So I think it's a good time to try something new. And with Seth Rollins, it's looking like it could be a while before we see him. Hopefully he's back by WrestleMania time, by WrestleMania season, but we don't know yet.
This is not the first time that he's been the world champ and had to drop the title because of an injury. Sometimes it feels like with Seth Rollins, if it wasn't for bad luck, he'd have no luck at all. I just hate it for Seth. He was on such a roll right now.
Yeah, you could argue he was doing some of his career best work right now, just with the way he was leading this faction, the way they were teasing the stuff with Braun, the subtle stuff where you knew it's coming down the road, and when it happens, it's going to be big, but they're not rushing it yet. And then they had to obviously rush it. But it just really sucks to see that happen.
What was the nature
when they're at the top of their game?
What was the nature of his injury?
It was a shoulder injury when he was doing when he did the coast to coast during his match.
Rotator cuff. Anybody know?
I don't think they've said exactly. We saw him walking around with a sling, and that's the report, that it's a shoulder injury. And there's two narratives out there. One, it could be a long time, and the other is maybe he could do some sort of Band-Aid technique and be back in time for WrestleMania. But either way, it's less than ideal.
Bad news, man. Shoulder surgeries seem to be the most complicated and the hardest ones to rehab.
Yeah.
Well, it's no problem rehabbing with Raj Giri here. We get our download, all the news that's fit to print. Raj, I appreciate the time as always. Where can our listeners keep up with you every week?
Keep checking out Massive Heat on the Watch Podcast Heat Wrestling.com YouTube channel. And check us out. And follow me on Twitter at the Raj Giri.
Oh man, I don't know if you've been following Raj this past week, Eric, but he's been on fire. He's been pissing everyone off. I mean,
I love it. Between him and Nick, it's like I don't even have to post anything anymore. These guys have taken it to a different level, and I'm enjoying it.
People get so upset over the most minor wrestling take that it's insane.
But it is fun, isn't it? I mean, it's kind of hard not to be like the puppet master and pull the strings and watch them dance. It's kind of fun.
Yeah. It can get tiring after a while too. Like after 3 days of people still tweeting the same thing over, it's like, okay, guys, let's move on.
It's like those tweets just keep ricocheting around in social media. I don't know. That'll do it for us this week here with Raj Giri. Raj, thanks for all the time, and happy belated birthday, man.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Raj.
Have a good one.
See you next time.
If you own a handgun for self-defense, your storage likely fits into one of two pretty frustrating categories. It's either locked away, meaning it's safe, but it's out of reach in case of an emergency, or it's unsecured, which means you're leaving it vulnerable to anyone. Stopbox USA saw the problem and designed a groundbreaking solution, the Stopbox Pro. With the Stopbox Pro, now you never have to choose between security and readiness again. Its ingenious push-button locking system gives you fast, reliable access when every second matters without the hassle of keys or reliance on batteries. It's 100% mechanical, so it works every time, no power needed. And with the Stopbox USA, you can finally have both security and readiness. You see, the Stopbox Pro's mechanical keyless system allows for fast, secure access without the risk of fumbling for keys when every second counts. It's also battery-free, so you never have to worry about your lock not working. You also don't have to worry about tariffs because everything is made right here in the USA. Speaking of the USA, the Stopbox Pro is TSA compliant. And right now, for a limited time, our listeners can get 15% off at Stopbox USA when you use the code 83weeks at checkout. Head on over to stopboxusa.com and use the promo code 83weeks for 15% off your entire order. After you purchase, they're going to ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's time to count down the top 5. Brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
All right, Eric, one of my favorite parts of the show every single week, we give Eric Bischoff's top 5. And today is an interesting top 5 that you came up with. I got to be honest, I didn't see this one coming. The top 5 reasons that Nitro's production was better than Monday Night Raw. Now, this is interesting because for years and years, it's been parroted that WWE had much better production. And you say, nay, WCW doesn't get their just due. Let's start with Eric Bischoff's number 5 on the top 5 reasons that Nitro's production was better. And this is an easy one. Nitro was live every week, Eric.
Fundamentally changed the entire industry. And people use that term all the time. Oh, it's changed the industry. Nothing has changed the industry more than a decision that I made personally to move Nitro to a live weekly show. It took WWE almost 2 years to follow suit, and they've never looked back since. Live television, live wrestling in particular, is what really helped change the landscape of the wrestling business in a legitimate way, not just for WCW, across the board.
It's interesting too, when you think back on how important this was really and truly, because live had not been a staple. I mean, even Saturday night's main event was not live. And I think people just assumed it was because Saturday Night Live was a show also on NBC, but it was not live. And as the internet was growing, I don't know that wrestling could have survived without pivoting to live. Do you?
No. I mean, again, if you step back, like if you were a financial analyst that was studying the business of the wrestling business back then, and you looked at the critical markers, those moments along the way over the last 20 years or whatever time period you're looking at, what changes were made that radically changed the trajectory of the industry? Again, you won't find one of them, in my opinion. Well, here are the top 2, and kind of one of the top 2. One is Nitro's commitment. And by the way, it was a very expensive commitment. One of the reasons that nobody did live every week is because live was really expensive. WWE at that time they'd show up at a location, one episode would be live, and then they'd hold that same audience and tape next week's episode, right? The reason they did that is because traveling every single week for a fresh show is very expensive. You're doubling your costs. When Ted said, Eric, go head to head with WWE and go win, the very first thing I determined was live. When I sat down with that little yellow legal pad, live tape, their tape, I'm going to go live. Biggest differentiation, market differentiation, was being live. Now you fast forward, one of the reasons that WWE has done so well financially in the public markets, as well as their mergers and acquisitions, I should say, is because the value of those broadcast rights went up so significantly, mostly because it's live and because it targeted 18 to 49-year-olds. It took Vince 2 years to figure it out, but he finally followed WCW's path, so to speak. They went live every week, and they started targeting 18 to 49-year-olds instead of the teens and preteens. Those 2 things have probably had a more significant impact on the business of the professional wrestling business than anything else, because none of those things would have ever happened. Netflix wouldn't have happened if WWE wasn't live sports or live sports action, live action sports, call whatever you want. They would have not ever gotten that deal. Their stock prices would have never gotten to the point. They would have never gone public, for crying out loud. So yeah, I think going live was critical. It comes in at number 5, but it could easily be number 1.
By the way, from an ad sales perspective, it's huge too. I can tell you, as a local advertiser who spent millions of dollars between Alabama and Tennessee just promoting my mortgage company, the thing I got the best results on, the thing I got the best bang for the buck, the best return on investment, without question, was live. I only bought live sports and live local news. And let's be real, local news is what it is, but nobody's going to DVR local news and watch it later. They're just not going to do that. So news and sports, what do they have in common? They're live, and that is Eric's number 5. Let's take a look at Eric's number 4 on the top 5 reasons that Nitro's production was better. The cruiserweight division's presentation. Now, I know what you're thinking to yourself. You're thinking to yourself, that's not really production. But I agree with Eric. It is, because technically the WWF did a light heavyweight division, but nobody talks about it. Nobody remembers it. Nobody celebrates it. It was the production and the way these guys were presented as not less than, right, Eric?
Correct. And, production is, that's subjective, because to some people, production includes, the obvious: lights, audio, pyro, the number of cameras you have, what kind of audio system you have set up. Those are all physical manifestations of quote unquote production. But production also includes creative. Production also includes pacing. Production also includes format. Really, like, boring shit nobody ever talks about, right? Nobody ever talks about format when they talk about professional wrestling, but they should, because the format, in this case, the live format that Nitro introduced into the industry as being the first weekly live show on national show. Sorry, I forgot where I was going. I'm trying to make a point. And I lost myself. Keep going.
Well, we were just talking about the way you shot these matches too.
So the entire presentation is all a part of production. And we made a decision for the cruiserweights to be at the crossover section. So we'd go on at 8, Raw would come on at 9, and we'd both be on from 9 to 10, right? We were 2 hours for a while, they were 1. It was the positioning, the format that positioned those cruiserweights right at the cruiserweight, or right at the top of the crossover hour. And why did I want them there, you ask? Because there's viewing habits, right? There's viewing patterns. It's almost subliminal or subconscious in people's minds. But at the top of the hour, people have a tendency to pick up their remote and see what's going on next. Well, I didn't want them to pick up the remote and see what's going on over on Monday Night Raw. If I had them up to myself from 8 to 9, when we were unopposed, I wanted to hold on to them. And it was a creative process as well as a production effort to make sure that these matches took place right at the crossover. They would generally start about 3 or 4 minutes before 9 o'clock, and they'd carry through to about 3 or 4 minutes after the 9 o'clock. That was kind of like the target time within the format for cruiserweights. And specifically wanted the action, and this is where I'd work with Kevin or whoever was agenting the match and responsible for it. This is where I'd want the peak of the action at that 9 o'clock. So I wanted bodies flying through the air at straight up 9 o'clock, because I knew then if I had those viewers and they're watching that action, they're not flipping the channel. So I would agree that production and the cruiserweight division were synonymous in many respects.
Number 3 on Eric's list of the top 5 reasons that Nitro's production was better than WWE's Monday Night Raw. It's the Nitro look and feel, the sets, the lighting, the music. And I know this feels on the surface like a little thing, but it is not a little thing. That set is so iconic. I mean, this entrance with the pyro out of the corner posts and the light under the ring. Like, I remember you could sort of see through the ring skirt. It was sort of glowing. I don't know, dude. I feel like if WWE dusted this off just for a one-off, you'd take grown men to tears. They loved it so much. And man, let's remember, Monday Night Raw was just 3 big letters, R-A-W. That's all. It was 3 giant red letters, R-A-W. This is a whole nother ball game here in the presentation, Eric. That's why it's number 3, right?
It is. And, one of the things that I talked to David Crockett about, and there were a lot of other people involved beyond David, but I wanted, when it came to the set design, I wanted the Nitro, I wanted the open of the show. This is the way I described it to people. This is the way I described the show to just about everybody that worked for me on the production side, is I want this show to feel like a party. I don't want it to look like a sporting event. I want it to feel like a party. I want people sitting at home to say to themselves, consciously or subconsciously, man, when this party comes to my town, me and my buddies are going. That was the vibe. That was the energy, including the look and the pyro and everything else. That's why we did the, Nitro watch parties. We fabricated that shit, and then it became a reality. We shot those things trying to make people believe that there were actually people sitting around having Nitro parties. And about 3 weeks later, they started sending in tapes and people were actually doing it. So those are all instruments, tools, production tools that we use to make Nitro feel like a party, including the graphics in the set.
Well, I can't wait to talk about number 2 on the list. But before we do, I want to remind you that over at SaveWithConrad.com, man, I can help you own a house for less than you're paying in rent. Yes, I'm talking to you. If you feel like you're stuck in that apartment, you can get into a new house with no money down and your new house payment be less than your current rent. But what you need is a plan, and we can help you get started at no cost, no obligations. We want to be your mortgage advisor for life. We don't say no, we say not yet, but here's how. Let's get a plan together right now at SaveWithConrad.com. All right, folks, by now you know that Eric Bischoff is on a fitness journey. He's looking better than ever, and he gives a ton of credit to Signos. And I got to admit, I don't even know that I would have necessarily thought that Signos was for Eric. Looks like he's in pretty good shape, right? But he's in better shape than ever because he has real-time insights into what's going on in his body. I mean, imagine that if you had that data instantly. Eric has told us that he has started tracking his glucose thanks to Signos through what's called a CGM, or a continuous glucose monitor. It's basically a biosensor that enables you to see all of your food choices and the timing and activity and stress and how all of it affects your individual body in real time. So we're not just reading something and saying, hey, in theory or in practice. No, you're getting real-time insights as to what's going on in your body. Let me explain. When you eat carbs, your blood sugar rises and your body releases insulin to shuttle that sugar into your cells for energy. But if you become insulin resistant, well, now the sugar doesn't get used properly and it just lingers in your bloodstream. And that's when the weight gain and the fatigue and the long-term health risks start to build. Managing a healthy weight and blood sugar range can reverse this cycle, and that's where Signos comes in. And I want to give you a heads up. Maybe you didn't know this, but 88% of Americans are classified as metabolically unhealthy, and like 73.6% of adults here in America are classified as either overweight or obese. I want you to take a look at Signos because you're going to learn exactly which foods will cause spikes in your body. You'll get in the moment alerts when your glucose is rising, and you'll even get personalized suggestions like taking a quick walk to get yourself back within range. You'll understand the difference between physical hunger and stress eating. You're going to have more energy throughout the day. You're going to sleep better at night. And you're going to do this because you're getting personalized, science-backed support to help you reach your health goals, whatever they may be. And here's a fun fact. We may not know this or think about it, but we all make more than 227 food decisions a day. Now imagine how much easier those would be if you had that personalized data to guide you along. I'm a big believer in this product. Number one, and I think I've mentioned this before, my wife is in the medical research industry and we vet all of our sponsors. So when Signos came to our house and my wife opened it, she couldn't believe it. She told me, Conrad, this is the real deal. Like, this is what we use. And now the idea that it's available for just Tom, Dick, and Harry like you and I, this is groundbreaking stuff. If you're serious about taking better care of yourself or getting control of your health or dropping some weight, or you just want to feel better, man, you're feeling sluggish at work, you're not sleeping at night, Signos can help. Signos took the guesswork out of managing our weight and gave us personalized insights into how our body works. They've got this AI-powered app and a biosensor, and now Signos helps me build healthier habits and stick with them. Right now, Signos even has an exclusive offer for our listeners. Go right now to Signos.com. That's Signos.com and get $10 off select plans with the code 83weeks. That's Signos.com. The code is 83weeks and you'll get $10 off select plans today. That's Signos.com, Signos.com. And the promo code is 83weeks. Coming in at number 2 on Eric's list of the top 5 reasons why Nitro's production was better than Monday Night Raw. And this is a fun one. Reality-based storytelling and on-location segments. That's a big deal. Tell us about it, Eric.
Well, the reality-based storytelling was something that, as we talked about earlier in this show, was something that really started to evolve with Nitro. When I realized what I was up against going head-to-head with WWE and looking at that 18 to 49-year-old target audience that nobody else was paying attention to, I didn't know exactly how to appeal to that audience. It was a process, trial and error to a degree. But I knew, for example, I wanted Scott Hall to come down to be Scott Hall. I want to give him a gimmick name. I hate gimmick names. First of all, most of them sound stupid. And the only thing that they do is give ownership and control over the licensing and merchandising of the talent of the company that employs said talent and gives them a gimmick name. I wanted Scott Hall to be Scott Hall. I wanted Kevin Nash to be Kevin Nash. I wanted Bill Goldberg to be Bill Goldberg. Yes, we had other characters, and we introduced characters like Mortis, for example, because we were still trying to find ways to satisfy certain segments of the audience. But the core, the focus, the A stories, the most important stories were reality based. And that's right up there with live 18 to 49 reality based. We did it first. We did it best in some respects with regard to the NWO, but another absolute game changer.
I mean, the NWO segments looked real. You know, it was an air of realism, and we know eventually everything else would follow. The bloodline docudrama content, the broken Matt Hardy, but the NWO stuff, I think that's why it resonated. It felt real. And the on location stuff, like when you guys shut down the park at Disney and everybody's calling 911 and the Mall of America shoot, like it felt relatable. Well, maybe until they wheeled out a big block of ice. But let's get to number one on Eric Bischoff's top 5 reasons that the Nitro presentation and production was better than Monday Night Raw. The NWO Takeover presentation. I mean, this is exactly what we've been talking about the whole time. Maybe there's no better example than the NWO. It was so different than everything we'd ever seen before, right?
It was, and the audience was just, they were dying for it. They didn't even know they were dying for it. It just snuck up on them and grabbed them. But everything about this presentation, you know, and one thing I want to make clear though, and I firmly believe that the Nitro production back when we were head to head was better. Now, better in this case is also subjective. One of the things, from a technical point of view, you could certainly argue that Kevin Dunn and his crew could absolutely produce a higher quality when it came to production values, lights, camera angles, audio, whatever. Nobody does it better to this day than WWE. In fact, nobody's even close anymore. And WWE, Kevin Dunn and his team were always able to produce a glossier, tighter product than WCW. WCW's felt more real. It allowed the viewer to feel like they were in the venue. And I've said this many times, you've heard it. Watching WWE back in the day was like watching Disney on ice. The production values were so high that it didn't feel live. You could have been watching it at an IMAX theater. It was that good. Nitro felt like you were at a party and you were part of the show. And that subconscious, subliminal difference between the two products is one of the reasons why Nitro was so successful head to head, because we just felt like the right place to hang out.
It was unbelievable, man. I mean, you let the NWO seemingly break the fourth wall, you know, when you hear the announcers sort of whispering like, hey, what's going on?
Yep.
It just makes it feel more dangerous, more authentic. It felt like a hostile takeover. Some great graphics here and great stills if you want to join us and watch along with us here at 83weeks.com. Yeah, WCW wasn't just compelling in wrestling and competing against the WWE in wrestling. They were reinventing how wrestling looked on television. And yes, everyone caught up, but years later. So let's recap Eric's top 5 reasons that Nitro was having better production than Monday Night Raw. It was live every week. The way the cruiserweights were presented, the look and feel, the sets, the music, the fire, the reality-based presentation, and of course, the NWO. What was your favorite piece of WCW production? Why did you like the way Nitro felt versus the way Raw felt? Let us know in the comments below. and we will be looking for those comments next week here on the show. I should mention that we also can help you save a little cash over with SaveWithConrad.com. If you haven't already, did you know that we can help you knock out that credit card debt just in time for the holidays? Don't put Christmas on a credit card. Let us help at SaveWithConrad.com. If you're feeling stuck making the minimum payments, man, what are we going to do in like a month from now when we got to get some holiday shopping kicked into high gear? Well, let's get rid of the house payments for 2 months. Let's go ahead and get rid of the credit card debt forever. And let's save ourselves a boatload of cash. We're routinely helping our podcast listeners save $500, $600, $700, $800 a month. How much can you save? Find out right now at SaveWithConrad.com. I also want to let you know, if your business targets men 25 to 54 years old, there's no better place to advertise than right here with us on 83 Weeks. You hear some of the same advertisements year after year from the same companies. Well, why is that? Well, because it really works. And with our super targeted audience, there's very little waste. Go right now to advertisewitheric.com and find out more about advertising here on 83 Weeks. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave us a 5-star rating wherever you listen to us on podcasts. You can also hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications bell right now at 83weeks.com so you won't miss us the next time we're live. Love to have some social interaction for you. We're even going to start doing some teases about what we're talking about on social. So follow us everywhere at 83 Weeks. I'm talking to you, Twitter and Facebook and even Instagram. And keep up with Eric this weekend before Real American Freestyle at The Real Eric Bischoff over on Instagram. And of course, it's happening as you're listening to this tomorrow. RealAmericanFreestyle.com is where you can grab your tickets. There's still a handful available at Penn State University, or just do what I'm going to do and fire it up on the Fox Nation app. It's available in the App Store or anywhere you enjoy your apps. Look for it, the Fox Nation app. It's only like $7 or $8 a month. And you're going to get what's essentially a giant PLE here included. Kurt Angle's going to be there. It's going to be a who's who, is it not, Eric?
It is indeed. You're going to see some great matchups. Olympic champions, world champions, the elite of freestyle wrestling is going to be there. Some of the biggest names. Mason Parris is going to be there. It's going to be a hell of a night.
And some of these guys you may see in the future in the UFC and WWE, and you can follow them during their legitimate athletic career right now, this weekend, starting tomorrow at Fox Nation. Grab those tickets now at realamericanfreestyle.com, and we'll see you next week right here on 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson here to tell you a little more about what adfreeshows.com is all about. Get early, ad-free access to more than a dozen of your favorite wrestling podcasts every single week, starting at just $9. That's less than 20 cents an episode each month. And yes, you can listen to them all directly through Apple Podcasts or your regular podcast apps. How easy is that? Ad-free shows also has thousands of hours worth of bonus content and docuseries like Title Chase, Eric Fires Back, Conversations with Conrad, and The Insiders. Plus new series like The Book with David Crockett, Monday Mailbags with Mike Chioda and Nick Patrick, and a whole lot more. And you want to talk about early? You can't get any earlier than listening to the shows live. You can be a part of the live studio audience as we record the podcast. Plus ride shotgun alongside your favorite childhood heroes for live watch-alongs, Q&As, and other interactive experiences every single month. Come on now, see for yourself what thousands of other wrestling fans from around the world have discovered, that adfreeshows.com is the best value in wrestling. Check it out today, and hey, when you do, the first week is completely free. adfreeshows.com.